So one interesting behavior that you can get out of acceptability judgments is something called an interaction, in particular, a superadditive interaction when you have a factorial design. So what this means is that each factor that you vary, you expect to have some effect. So if we're manipulating different factors having to do with syntactic islands, we might expect them to impact how acceptable people find these particular utterances. So you have each factor will therefore have some impact on how acceptable someone finds that utterance. So z-score rating is a stand-in. It's a way of averaging together your results, normalizing them. But so it basically on the y-axis is representing how acceptable you find this utterance. And so we were talking before about two factors that were varied in these island acceptability judgment experiments: the length of the dependency, whether it was in the matrix or the embedded clause, right? Or the presence or absence of an island structure. And so the idea is each of those factors has some impact on the acceptability. So first, let's look at what happens when you go from the solid line to the dotted line. So that's saying don't have an island structure, have an island structure. So we have, that would be in fact from before stimuli types 1 and 3. So we would have no island structure, right? And you would judge it to be, say, this acceptable. And then just the fact that you have an island structure in there at all has some impact. You maybe judge it less acceptable, right? And you can see that over here on this other graph, the potential no island effect, which we'll talk about in a moment. But, you have some impact of, some acceptability that you give your non-island structure utterance, and then the very same utterance, you haven't changed the length of the dependency, but just having that island present drops it down this amount. Okay, that's one impact, right? The other impact is the length. So you're going from matrix to embedded, and you can see here that goes down a little bit when you go from having your gap in the matrix clause and you make your person work a little harder, remember a little bit more, and have it in the embedded clause. It goes down a little bit. And you can see that here in each of these lines. It goes from here down to here, or it goes from here down to here. Now, the interesting thing, the super additive thing that we're looking for is to say, okay, is there an additional drop, in this case in acceptability, that comes beyond the additive effects of length and island? So we already know that when you add in an island structure, you drop this much. We already know that when you go from matrix to embedded, you drop this much. Do you drop more than that? That's super additive, above the amount you would expect to drop. So if you don't, if you're like, well, I dropped this much because I had an island structure present, now I'm here, and I go from here to here, right, because I went from matrix to embedded, I dropped that much. Well, if you add those two together, you get this. And just looking at it, that looks like parallel lines, right, for each of your effects, right? I'm dropping exactly the amount I would predict based on the two factors present. Superadditive, an island effect, says I actually drop more than that. So even beyond the impact of length, even beyond the impact of the presence of an island structure, I am, in this case, this stimulus is even more unacceptable than we would predict from those two things. So there is something else there making it unacceptable, which is your signal that there's some sort of islandy thing happening. And that is really the idea that you're looking for. So visually, this shows up as non-parallel lines, as your super additive interaction. So again, you can see here, you drop this much from going to the absence to the presence of an island structure. You drop this much, right, when you're going from here to here would be, going from here to here would be from matrix to embedded. And this is much more than you expect. This is beyond the impact of each of those two factors. So that's our super additive effect. And again, we're seeing this as show up as non-parallel lines.